according to the best of my ability and understanding. So help me God.
All right, congratulations. I think this young man may have some special guests that he brought with him. Would you like to introduce your mother and father?
So I have my mom and dad, Anthony Kenny Sr. and Joyce Kenny.
You must have done something right.
And I also have my student government advisor, Mr. Jonas Vander and Mr. Tanisha Cooper.
Please stand up. I'm going to ask, I think, Mr. Kenny, if you would pin that on your son's lapel. Now, we're going to borrow them for a year and we'll give them back. Yeah, I'll give them back. Address your son now as Regent.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move forward. Yeah, be sure to press push when you want to talk and take it off because of the feedback that we have in this particular room when you're not talking. So we start with today's meeting of the Louisiana Tuition Trust Authority, and I'm not sure which one we're going to start with, but I think it's Rhonda.
I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Hunter Reed, Regent Adley, Regent Chabert, Senator Clater, Regent David, Regent Ewing, Regent Kenny, Regent Levy,
Here.
Regent Lipsy, Regent Markle, Regent McDonald, Regent Meyer, Ms. Mirza, Regent Perez, Regent Pryor, Regent Seal, Regent Temple, Regent Tennyson, Regent Wyatt, and Mr. John Williams. You have 8 present, which does not represent a quorum.
We will proceed nevertheless.
So we're going to go in executive committee.
Yes.
Executive committee, Commissioner Hunter Reed, Regent Chabert, Regent Levy,
Here.
Ms. Mirza, Regent Temple, here. Mr. Williams. Here. So you have 4 of 7 members present, which does represent a quorum. So I'd just like to remind everybody, only the executive committee can vote on the action items today.
You know, the executive committee can act in those circumstances when we do not have a meeting or a quorum. And so we will proceed. First item, would you, Dr. Suwan Boutte,
yes, sir.
Tell us what we're doing here today?
Okay. The first item would be the approval of the minutes from the prior. Okay. All right. The next item is a consent agenda item, and Regents, you are approving acts of the legislature, Act 57 and Act 687. Act 57 adds out-of-state proprietary schools as eligible providers to the existing START program. These out-of-state proprietary schools would be those that are not licensed by the Board of Regents. However, they are accredited by state accrediting agencies, and they have fulfilled those requirements. So this is what that does. The next thing is to implement in rule the addition of the START K-12 program through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Members can now, in a 529 program, pay for K-12 expenditures with withdrawals up to $10,000 per year. In the state of Louisiana, this will be a separate program, and this is to codify that program in rule.
I presume everybody kind of understands what Dr. Boutte was talking about. They're starting a new program that allows this, what we have had in higher education, these savings programs with the tax benefits that are attached to them, are now going to be also available to K through 12 educational cost. Now, there's some differences, and Dr. Boutte could talk to you for hours about the differences, but they don't have all the tax advantages, but they have some tax advantages. And so as to start this program from the beginning, it will allow withdrawals of monies that are placed into this START account, K-12 START account, for legitimate educational purposes. For example, tuition at a school or some other related medical educational endeavor. And so this is kind of now spreading out the concept of let's save for education.
Yes, sir.
Let's have more people spending more focus on making sure that our children and our students who need education and need the funds that go with it have an opportunity through their parents or through other sources to have the advantages provided by these two programs. If I left something out, Dr. Boutte?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, it's like, whoa, we got some microphones that work. So like a cover deal. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, this will be, basically it's still a 529, but they're just expanding it. Now, where else in the country have they expanded 529 to go into?
Nationwide, because this is a federal law which now allows not only for qualified higher education expenses, but now for the payment of K-12 private school tuition expenses or only tuition.
Only tuition.
Yes,
Only
sir.
tuition K through 12. And it still applies that if it's not used by that child, it has to be transferred to someone else to use, correct?
Yes, sir. A few differences between the START saving program that you're familiar with and the START K-12, which has to be programmed and implemented. Our state of Louisiana START program allows for earnings enhancements, as we've talked to you before, 2% to 14%, depending upon the adjusted gross income of the account owner. It also provides for state tax benefits. It was determined legislatively that we would not have those benefits for START K-12 because of the current impact to the state's fiscal situation if that were to be done. That, in addition to, we anticipate that the treasurer will have separate investment options for K-12 because, as you can imagine, in a START program, you may be starting when the child is born. It's going to be at least 18 years unless they're a genius before you do that. But for START K-12, you start when they're born, and 5, you could be paying expenses. So the investment options will need to have more liquidity to them.
Right. Another
reason, because it doesn't have the earnings enhancements benefit, doesn't have the state tax benefit, more liquidity to create a separate START K-12 program. That's the reason Louisiana is doing this separately.
Gotcha.
For right now, it will take us at least 8 months is our estimate to program START K-12. In the legislation, you can imagine, you have parents that want to be able to use this immediately. So there is a 1-year transition period for 2018 that says 2018 only. If you had a START account as of December 31st of 2017, and you had enough dollars in that START account as of that time, you may, starting in this calendar year only, withdraw monies from your regular START account to pay K-12 tuition, and that is the transition period. Yes, sir, $10,000, and that's a federal limit. One time. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Loss of Advisory Program has reviewed this, and they do recommend approval of this consent agenda item.
I'm sorry, Mr. Levy. Mr. McDonald's not on the executive committee. Did Chabert? Okay. Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams. Okay, thank you.
All right, there's no opposition, that motion passes.
Okay. And yes, sir. As we continue with the initiative to acquaint the board members more with the programs that we operate, this one is just giving you, and I'm not going to read all this to you, don't worry. This is giving you some background, additional background on the LA Able account program that we also administer as a part of LOSFA programs. So now you have START, which is the 529 program. You'll have START K-12, which is a part of 529. Now we have under 529A, that provision of the Internal Revenue Source Code, is the ABLE program. We've talked to you about this before. This is for individuals with family members or themselves who have disabilities. You think of it as a 529, yes, but the major difference is that it can be used much more broadly than just higher education expenses, and you can see there the listing of those expenses. Our office, LOSFA Programs, was chosen to administer this because we also administer the 529, and administration is very similar, and the same contractor that did our START system was able to use that component and build our ABLE system as well.
I think the only question I have, and I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday, was the perhaps increased expense of having staff that would administer ABLE.
Yes, sir. As to this point, we would definitely like to thank you as Regents, and like to thank Mr. Ginn and the Regents fiscal staff, Dr. Rollo, because the Regents were able to provide $68,000 of seed money towards the programming of this. It has cost us in excess of $140,000, which LOSFA programs absorb the rest of those expenditures. Ms. Fulco's here with me today, who administers START, ABLE, and soon to be START K-12. Her staff has agreed to absorb the additional workload. Know that we have said to the legislature as well as to Regents that as this begins to grow, we will not be able to absorb that with existing staff. So the verification is very much on the part of the account owner as they withdraw it, such that, you know, any tax implications and documentation must be maintained by them and not by our staff, which, to your point, Regent Levy, reduces that burdensome workload on the staff.
Because when these take off,
Yes, sir.
hopefully they all take off,
Yes.
It's going to take a lot more work on your part, and we thank you for your willingness to take on these new challenges.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
May I ask a question? I think this is an excellent program. How popular is it? Do you have any idea how many people in our state are using the START program for college right now? Of course, we don't know about K through 12.
Yes. Carol, do you want to give him the current START stats?
Yeah, we have almost about $650 million right now. We were high, a little bit higher at year end, but because of the market and all, it's gone down a little bit. And we have 60,000 actual START active accounts. Now, what happens is we've used it for quite some time, the regular START account. So therefore, those kids are graduating and they're closing them out. So these are net. We used to do about 300 accounts a month. Now it's closer to 500 a month, and that's new accounts.
So, right.
That speaks well for stewardship, doesn't it?
I don't know if the audience could hear Carol's statement, but it's $650 million in our START program and over 60,000 individual accounts and growing. I'd say that sounds pretty impressive.
Because K-12 is going to be worse.
Yes, sir. We
It'll
think
be
K-12 will
better,
grow
not worse, better,
faster.
Carol.
It will grow faster.
more effort. Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions of our guest? Is there any other business?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Louisiana Tuition Trust Authority? Second. All right, no opposition. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies. Good luck. of Regents Committee meeting. If you'll please take your seats when you can.
How do we?
Thank you, John. If you haven't already, folks, please put your phones on silence. And remember, if we are streaming live, so if you would press the button for your light to come on when it's time for you to speak. That one, yeah. I didn't get to say earlier, but we needed Anthony on that last meeting. We need to go ahead and swear him in a little bit early, but he was elected as the Council of Student Body Presidents, by the Council of Student Body Presidents, served this year as our student board member. Anthony, why don't you tell us, while we have 1 or 2 seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself. Press the button for the light to come on.
All right, so, oh, my bad. All right, so good morning. My name is Anthony B. Kinney. I'm a senior mass communications major for Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I serve as a Student Government Association president at Southern University here in Baton Rouge. A little bit about myself. I'm very outgoing. I love Louisiana. I love fighting for higher education. One of my biggest things being the SJ president is putting the students first. I think the biggest interest of any institution, university, is the interest of the students. And I think the students are the biggest stakeholders of any institution, university, college, community college, anything of that nature. So one of my biggest things is making sure I put my best foot forward for the students of Louisiana, and making sure that the students of Louisiana is, even though a lot of people say we're like bottom of the totem pole for education, my biggest goal to make sure we crack top 20, top 10, top 5, and be #1 eventually. So, even during my tenure here, I just want to make sure we set that foundation going forward, so we make sure Louisiana be better where we found it. So, yes, sir.
That's good, Mr. Kinney. Let me suggest to you, as I have just every student body president that has served on this board, look around. We don't hear as quick as you speak, so I know you won't even know what I'm talking about, but you're talking in 48, and we're listening in 33 1/3. So welcome, and I want to go ahead at this time and appoint you to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, the Facilities and Property Committee, and the Sponsored Programs. When we get Mr. Tennyson up and running, we will make some appointments there. I also want to announce that that I am appointing Mr. Jay Seal to our executive committee. He is going to be replacing Thomas Henning. And so we now have a full complement on there. And thank you, Jay, for taking on this responsibility. Okay, let's see. We now move to our committee member meetings. Do we need to call the roll for the board, Carolyn? Yeah, I mean for the committee, and we'll have Dr. Denby call the roll for your Committee of Academic and Student Affairs.
Yes, sir.
Regent Chabert.
Here.
Regent Adley. Regent Pryor. Regent Temple. Here. Regent Wyatt. Regent Kenny. Here. LCTCS representative. LSU representative. Southern University representative. And University of Louisiana representative. We do have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Denby, thank you. You have some background information for us for the committee?
Yes, sir, I do. First, I'd like to start off by reviewing just briefly again what the sort of issues that will come to this committee consist of, and these are mostly right out of the Constitution: to approve, disapprove, or modify a proposed degree program, Department of Instruction, or eliminating an existing degree program or Department of Instruction or division or similar subdivision. We manage the statewide curriculum inventory, which consists of programs that have been approved by the board. We facilitate articulation and transfer, which are, for example, the Master Articulation Matrix, and we create revise and eliminate academic affairs policies and procedures. So I'd like to start off, if it's okay, to just run through what a letter of intent is, which goes back to that first responsibility for this committee. A letter of intent is this board's first official action in creating a new degree program at or above the bachelor's level. It has two purposes: to inform you of a campus's plan to develop a program and to allow the board to decide whether it should proceed, and also to coordinate the development of new academic programs in the state. For the campus, it's a pitch for adding a new program that should address role, scope, and mission. For example, it would not be within the role, scope of mission for University of Louisiana at Lafayette to propose or to intend to develop an AAS in welding, any more than it would be appropriate for Nichols to intend to develop a PhD in civil engineering, even though those are two related programs. But also, but also, in addition to the role, scope, and mission, a letter of intent should address the need and relevance and costs and experience that the campus has to develop that sort of a program. Need and relevance could be illustrated by indications of student and local interest. For example, some of the programs that you'll see today are being developed out of existing concentrations or minors, where the campus can demonstrate that students have been enrolled and completing and been interested in that minor. The question is, how will it contribute to the good of the order? Is there a history or evidence of active expertise? Is there industry involvement in the program? Have they contributed to the courses? Is there some element of commitment to support that program? And are there similar programs already available in the state, and why would this new program not be unnecessarily duplicative if it were developed? That's the duplication question. Plus, a letter of intent describes the costs that it would take for a campus to initiate and sustain it. What exists, what is needed, courses, faculty, and equipment, and that sort of thing. Our approach to a letter of intent is to work on an argument to recommend approval to you, but we do trust but verify. So if statements are made in a letter of intent that sound great, we believe them, but we'll also try to see evidence of that. So if a campus says we have a long history of courses in this area, we'll ask for enrollment and completers in those courses. We do send, by Regent's directives, letters of intent out to the chief academic officers, who are the chief provosts and chief academic officers at every institution in the state, and ask them to give some feedback on it. Does this letter of intent seem appropriate? Can you give any advice for strengthening the proposed program? Does it duplicate programs that you have? Those CAO, chief academic officer, responses are anonymous. We do not share them with the campus unless we have that CAO's permission, but we do share the gist of their comments with the campus to strengthen the letter of intent and any proposal that might come after it. Staff write-ups that you receive for this meeting summarize all of those questions and answers. And if approved, then the campus can go ahead and develop a full proposal, which undergoes a similar but different review and would also come to you for approval. So you'll see examples of these sorts of things in action as Janet describes the letters of intent that we have.
Good morning. We have two letters of intent for your consideration today. The first is for a Master of Science in Athletic Training at Southeastern. CADE, the National Accrediting Body for Athletic Training Programs, announced in 2015 that the master's degree will replace the bachelor's as the entry point for the athletic training profession. Undergraduate programs in athletic training must fully transition to the master's level by 2022. Southeastern's existing undergraduate program averages 15 graduates per year, and they expect similar numbers with full implementation of the graduate program. The next letter of intent is from LSU for a PhD in industrial engineering, which would be the only such program in the state. The intended program will be built from a popular focus with a standalone engineering undergraduate and graduate programs would be elevated, helping the university attract top faculty and students in the discipline. Senior staff recommend that the Academic and Student Affairs Committee approve the letters of intent to develop full proposals for an MS in athletic training at Southeastern and a PhD in industrial engineering at LSU.
Thank you, thank you, Ms. Uhall. Members, you've heard the recommendation of staff. I'd like to entertain a motion right now to approve these two items. Moved by Regent Kenny, second by Regent Temple. Any questions or discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Next, please.
Yes, sir. Next, we have proposals for two new programs. The first is an Associate of Applied Science in Aerospace Manufacturing Technology at Nunez Community College. The task lists and courses for Nunez's proposed AAS in Aerospace Manufacturing Technology were developed in consultation and collaboration with Space Tech Partners Incorporated out of Florida and with development specialists from Boeing. The curriculum will prepare students for Space Tech course certification and employment in aerospace manufacturing positions in places like NASA's Michaud Assembly Facility in New Orleans. With $1 million in grants from the Rapid Response and Fast Start programs, Nunez would like to enroll its first cohort this fall with capacity to eventually have 4 groups cycling through the training at a time. The second is a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Dance from Northwestern State University. Northwestern's proposed BFA in dance is different from the more common Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degrees in that it is like a professional bachelor's degree. Outside of the general education core, the BFA focuses entirely on dance, including courses in skills and technique, choreography, and dance pedagogy, as well as anatomy for dancers and dance theater technology. The degree will be an expansion of the active dance minor and dance performance concentration within the Bachelor of Science in Theater. Together, the concentration and minor have averaged 29 students enrolled per year, and last year, 8 of the 24 graduates in theater, or a third of the graduates, were in dance. Though several institutions have dance concentrations within theater and music degrees, this will be the only public degree in dance in Louisiana. Senior staff recommend that the committee conditionally approve the proposed programs, the AAS in Aerospace Manufacturing Technology and the BFA in dance.
Members, you've heard the recommendation. Thank you, Dr. Ben. I got a motion by UL System, second by Mr. Stevie Smith. Any discussion? Yeah. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Dr. Denby, would you proceed?
Yes, sir. The next item is a request to reconfigure an existing PhD in geography and anthropology at LSU. LSU has had a PhD in geography since 1938, when cultural geography also meant anthropology. In 2000, a separate anthropology concentration was added to the PhD program, and in 2013, the degree title was changed to recognize the 2 major areas of the field. LSU now has very strong bachelor's and master's programs in anthropology and enough PhD graduates in both areas to break them into separate degrees so that prospective students and faculty would be more attracted to LSU and recognized in their fields when they finish. The department will remain the Department of Geography and Anthropology, and the 2 faculties will continue to collaborate with research and dissertation committees, but senior staff recommends that the committee Recommend approval of the reconfiguration to a PhD in anthropology and a PhD in geography at LSU.
Members, you've heard the recommendation of staff. So I have a motion moved by Regent Temple, second by Regent Ewing. Any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, the motion passes. And the next item on the agenda,
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Denby.
The next item is the consent agenda items, which include 5 requests for continued authorization of centers at LSU and the routine staff reports. We'd be glad to answer any questions you may have, but otherwise, the staff recommend approval of the items on the consent agenda.
Good. You've heard the recommendation moved by Regent McDonald, second by Regent Kenny. Any questions, any discussion? He's not on the committee.
That's all right.
Regent Mir, move second. Here you are.
Here.
Temple moved second by Regent Kenny. Any questions, Dr. McDonald? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Denby.
Yes, sir. And we don't have any other business.
We have no other business. I have a motion moved and second by Regent Temple to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're always trying to help.
Thank you, Regent Chabert, but stay seated. Our next committee is Finance. Please call your committee to order, Mr. Chabert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you please call the roll, Mr. Ginn?
Regent Chabert.
Here.
Regent David. Regent Ewing. Regent Lipsey. Regent Markle. Regent Pryor. Regent Seal. Regent Temple. LCTCS representative. LSU representative. Southern representative. UL system representative. Chairman, we have 7 members present in the quorum.
Thank you. What we're going to do now is Terrence going to give us a review of the budget. It says for review and approval, but as all of you know right now, we're kind of in a little dilemma that we're in special session and we don't exactly know what the budget will be till a week or so from now, Senator Ewing. I think we got to be done by 6 o'clock on the 28th.
So agenda item number 3 is the review and approval of the FY 18-19 operating budget distribution. As Regent Chabert stated, we normally approve that at this meeting, but we will not be doing so today. But I wanted to, could we go back to where we were, please?
I think it's Regent Seals.
No?
No. Nope. Yeah.
No?
There you go.
Okay. As I was saying, we
Go ahead,
usually
Mr.
approve the FY 18-19 operating budget distribution at the June meeting. In the first extraordinary special session of the legislature and the second, we did not generate enough revenue to fully fund higher education. And as a result, state general fund appropriations currently, as the last appropriations bill was passed in the second extraordinary special session, we hire it as approximately $173 million less than the current year funding level. The breakdown is as follows. TOPS is short approximately $85 million. Higher education institutions are short approximately $96 million. And there were appropriations added for Southern and Grambling that are to receive dollars on a pro rata basis should additional revenue be raised. Go Grants did receive ensuing fiscal year. Go Grants has been funded at $26.4 million for the past several years, but we did receive $1 million extra, and there's an additional $1 million to be received if additional revenue is raised. So if you look at the chart above, we're worth of remaining need going into fiscal year 18-19. That is being addressed currently in the third extraordinary special session. There is several revenue measures that are going through the process. We don't necessarily opine on the various bills and take a position on those, but we do suggest and make recommendations to the legislature that higher education and TOPS are prioritized. On the budget side of the equation, there are bills that are going through the process right now. If they're in the absence of another appropriations bill, higher education and TOPS and everyone else, for that matter, will receive additional dollars on a pro rata basis. So if we if we raise additional dollars, higher education and all state entities will receive additional dollars on a pro rata basis. However, there's some discussion within the Appropriations Committee that the bill is now open back up, and they will either reprioritize or make changes to the appropriations bill as it has been passed in the second extraordinary special session. Therefore, in the absence, yes, sir.
I've heard that several times.
Put your button on there, Stevie.
Is that on? Is it good?
Yeah.
So the term you used a second ago, which I've heard, pro rata.
Right.
So does that, to me, the simplest description of pro rata is they got 14 agencies and everybody gets 1/14 of any additional revenue. Is it that simple, or is it more?
That's simple. All ships rise together. All ships fall together.
By agency
by
level?
a pro rata distribution of the dollars. So if you are to receive 20% of the dollars, then as all revenue is raised,
okay,
you receive that percentage.
I got a better feel. That's a different answer than what I said. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
All right. I understand.
So normally we would have the budget allocation approved. In the absence of new revenue, speaking to the board members and our new commissioner, Commissioner Reed, today we are not prepared to provide a formula recommendation because, as we all know, formulas are not to be used on the way down, and having $96 million less than we had last year, it would not be appropriate to provide a formula allocation based on the dollars that are available now. Should additional dollars be raised, to what extent we raise those dollars will be to the extent that we will either run the model or advance the model. And therefore, we have a recommendation for you to consider today, and I'll read that. It's the senior staff request that the committee recommend that the board authorize the executive committee to approve the funding recommendations for all of higher education institutions, boards, and agencies for FY 18-19, and any adjustments among institutions within the systems as needed. So basically what we're doing is asking the board to allow the executive committee to approve the final allocation at the appropriate time once we know how much revenue has been raised.
Thank you, Ms. Ginn. Members, you've heard the recommendation of staff. You have a question? Regent Seal moves. Wait. No. The motion is that given the executive committee authority, once the session's over with, to adopt the budget, because we have a short window between the 28th and the 1st. Is that correct? That we have to approve.
And I'll explain that if you would like me to. So, Regent Ewing, the session ends on to have an allocation out by the
No, it's just given the executive committee authority. We got a motion by Regent Seal, second by Regent Ewing. I don't see Collis on the list of and Ewing. That's what I said. As my kids would say. Any questions? Any discussion, Stevie?
Yeah, just a question representing, of course, one of the management boards here. I'd like, frankly, I'd like to confirm that we're going to do that in consultation with our CFOs at our systems. right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
So
'cause
I've
that's-
already been in discussions with the CFOs and shared with them that we will absolutely work in concert with them. I think we've already put a calendar, something on the calendar for Commissioner Reed to speak to the president. So we will work in concert with the management boards and their staff to make sure that we are being fully transparent.
respect the timeline that's been recited. I mean, we know we're up
Yep,
against
yep.
the gun here.
Our discussion, any opposition? Hearing none, the motion approved. Go ahead, Mr. McGinn.
Agenda item number 4 is for other business today. I wanted to explain to our board that each year the Board of Regents receives Racing Commission funds, and the Racing Commission funds are collected from 0.5% of the total amount wagered at each of the off-track wagering facilities. The Board of Regents receives 33% of those funds annually. The Board of Regents utilizes those funds for a statewide effort. If you recall, Dr. Boutte mentioned earlier that the Board of Regents provided approximately $60,000 for the ABLE accounts when we were getting that program off the ground. And so we have made a decision that we are not going to use those funds for operating dollars. We use that for a statewide initiative that we can show exactly how we're using those dollars and how we're moving the needle within higher education. So this year, we're using the Racing Commission dollars. They've historically run about $400,000. This year they're a little low. People are not gambling as much for whatever reason. So we're going to receive $360,000. $20,000 of those funds will be used for the SIP-SOC crosswalk, and that is the work that Dr. Lisa Vosper does with LSU, with Dr. Stephen Barnes and our Workforce Commission to align our workforce and our curriculums to get to do some work there to have some better alignments. So the other funds will be used for open educational resources, and that is the purchase of things such as e-textbooks. That is a tremendous benefit to our students in that it lowers the cost of textbooks to our students. And at a time where we have increased tuition, this is definitely a benefit to them. So we wanted to use those funds for that effort for this year. So there's no motion. This is just an FYI item of just sharing with you what we're doing within the Finance Division and how we're planning to use those dollars in the current fiscal year. And Mr. Chairman, there's no other business before the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Ginn. There's no other business to come before the committee. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Senator Ewan, second by Regent Temple.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Chabert. Our next committee is Facilities and Property. That is Regent Meyer. Please call your committee to order, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Levy. I'd like to call the Facilities and Properties Committee a meeting to order. Mr. Herring can't be with us today, so we'll have Mr. Labriere call the roll.
Regent Meyer.
Here.
Regent Seal.
Here.
Regent Ewing. Regent Lipsey. Regent Temple. LSU representative. Southern representative. UL representative. LCTCS representative. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Labriere. Well, our first agenda item is the Small Capital Projects Report. Can you please begin?
Yes, sir. There are two items today. They are at Louisiana Tech, land acquisition. It's an old bank building adjacent to campus, and it is using self-generated revenues. And the next one is at LSU for the School of Veterinary Medicine. And this is just an increase in the scope. This project was approved previously, and they're just coming back for a change of scope.
Okay, members, you've heard the agenda items. Can I get a motion to approve? We have a motion and a second by Tyler Temple. Any questions on readiness? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition, ayes have it. We'll move on to the Small Capital Projects Report. The capital outlay. I'm sorry, capital outlay project. Yes, scope change.
This is a change in scope for a project that LSU Veterinary Medicine has. It was a $10 million project funded in 2017. $5 million was raised in private donations and $5 million through the capital outlay process through bonds. Through the process, they've wanted to change the square footage and add additional rooms. So it's a 9,000 square foot 50% more than the original amount. And the board previously approved this project.
Okay, members, we've heard the recommendation of the capital outlay project scope change for LSU A&M, the Stevenson Veterinary Hospital. Can I get a motion to approve? A motion by Regent Temple, second by Regent Seal. Any questions on the readiness? All in favor say aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it. Can I get I see no other business to come before the committee. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Regent Temple, second by Regent Seal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our audit committee. Regent Seal, please call your committee to order.
Carolyn, would you please call the roll for the audit committee?
Regent Seal.
Here.
Regent Perez. Regent Adley. Regent Chabert.
He's here.
Regent McDonald.
Here.
Regent Wyatt. We have, let's see, one. So we do not have a quorum. We have 3 out of 6.
I'd like to ask the chair to appoint a member temporarily to serve.
I'll appoint myself as a member of the audit committee.
So therefore, we have a quorum. All right, so we have a little bit of a slideshow. Are you going to narrate?
I am. Let's see if I can.
Have her identify herself.
Yes. Give us your name, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Swallow. I'm a director with Postal Wait Netterville, the outsourced internal audit provider for the Board of Regents.
Hold on. Wait.
Okay.
I don't think there was a, there is.
There you go.
You good?
We're good. So what we wanted to talk about today was approval of the internal audit charter. PNN, in approaching our internal audits, follows the international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing, which are developed by the Institute of Internal Auditors, what we refer to as the IAA. The IAA is an international professional association that serves as the internal audit profession's global voice, recognized authority, and knowledge leader. So that's our foundation for the internal audit procedures that we perform. The IAA standards require that an internal audit charter be developed, and the internal audit charter is a formal document that defines the internal audit activity's purpose, authority, and responsibility. The charter should establish the internal audit activity's position within the organization, including the nature of internal audit's functional relationship with the audit committee. It authorizes access to records, personnel, and physical properties within the organization relevant to the performance of internal audit engagements, and also defines the scope of internal audit activities. Final approval of the charter is the responsibility of the audit committee. So the charter that we're presenting for approval today was developed using the IAA's model internal audit charter as the foundation, and then we further took feedback from both members of the audit committee and management to cycle out the charter that, again, we're presenting for approval. So we appreciate the feedback from everybody in terms of making sure that the charter is appropriate for the needs and expectations of the Board of Regents Audit Committee. And so at this point in time, we would like to request approval of the internal audit charter.
I'd like to inform the committee that Regent Perez and I have worked on this charter, and we have made recommendations which have been incorporated into the charter. And at this point, both Regent Perez and I are very satisfied with the language of the charter, and we would commend it as appropriate for the audit task. So let me ask the committee for a motion to approve the audit charter that's been drafted. By Mr. McDonald. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
The chair seconds that. Is there any objection? Without objection, then the audit charter is adopted. I'd also like to ask you to discuss for us the risk assessment process that's underway right now.
Absolutely. So as Regent Seal indicated, we are in the midst of doing a risk assessment. The risk assessment is going to be, the results of the risk assessment is going to be the driver for developing the risk-based internal audit plan. So to do this risk assessment, we developed a risk assessment survey in conjunction with key members of Board of Regents Management, and we distributed that survey to 45 people. As of today, we had received responses from 36 people, so we're trending well in terms of the response rate. We appreciate all of the help that we've received from Board of Regents Management just in following up and helping us get those responses. So the next steps, as we get the remaining responses in, we're going to be analyzing the survey results. We may perform limited follow-up interviews with key individuals just to make sure we understand the survey results. And from there, we're going to be developing a draft internal audit plan that we will then recommend to the audit committee for approval.
Can you give us an idea when that plan may be available for the committee?
We expect to present that draft plan for approval at the August audit committee meeting.
Okay. Are there any questions for members of the committee or members of the board? Is there any other business to come before the audit committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. McDonald, seconded by Mr. Levy. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Regent Seal. And let me express my personal appreciation for the hard work that you and Sonia have put into developing this thing in a timely fashion. We'll be looking to you to make sure that we comply with all the audit requirements. Right. We will call the next committee, statewide programs. That again is Regent Seal.
All right. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Regent Seal, Chairman Seal. Regent Wyatt. Regent Adley. Regent Chabert. Regent Lipsey. Regent McDonald. Regent Pryor. Regent Temple. We have 4 members present, and we are 1 shy of a quorum.
I'd ask the chair to appoint a member.
Appoint myself.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So then the record will reflect that we have a quorum. Please proceed, Dr. Boutte.
Yes, sir. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, members. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. The first one is to implement rulemaking. This is Act 671 of the regular legislative session. This is basically Chairman Morrish's technical amendments to TOPS. It clears up some course offerings. Many of you heard about the AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 issue last year where students had to take both to receive credit. Now that has been rectified. This also brings TOPS Tech in line by adding physics to it. It also provides a provision for students who are prohibited from taking the last national testing date in April. The last severe weather we had in April, we had a test site that canceled the ACT test. Without this legislation, that would have meant that through no fault of their own, those students would have been forced to take one of the non-national test dates and therefore have a 1-semester penalty for TOPS. This part of the legislation says that only in those instances where the student is prevented through no fault of their own by something that happens at the testing site, they will be able to take the June test, and in this instance only the July test without the 1-semester penalty. A clarification that we had hoped to provide in this was for all TOPS students that are trying to become eligible for TOPS to be able to take both the June or July test with a semester penalty. We were not able to get the July test passed for everyone. It is only effective if you miss the April testing date because of something akin to a national disaster. The other rulemaking equivalencies that you talked about and passed in the joint BESE BOR meeting. Ms. Robin Lively, who sat right next to me, our staff attorney, is the person that works extremely hard to get all of those rules in effect. Since those are in effect with a graduating class of 2018, you can imagine we need to get that passed because we're running eligibility as we speak. So this is taking care of what you passed this morning and in putting it into rule.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Is there a motion for adoption of the consent agenda? Mr. McDonald, seconded by Mr. Levy. Without objection, then that consent agenda is adopted. Is there other business to come before the committee?
One more consent agenda item, the approval of exceptions. And again, the advisory committee has reviewed these requests for exceptions from students that were not able to remain continuously enrolled or earn the annual credit hours, again, through circumstances that they must document that prevented them from doing that. So we ask that you approve this consent agenda item as well.
Motion by Mr. McDonald, seconded by Mr. Chabert. Is there objection? Hearing none, then that matter is approved.
Okay. One other. Last education item for statewide programs. We've covered all of the other things. This is just letting you know that the FELP program, which was phased out as a result of the Affordable Care Act, that was federal student loans, of which LOSFA is a guarantor. That program is no longer in existence. However, we still have a portfolio of loans known as the FELP tail that we are working through. So basically, you work yourself out of business. The important thing for members to know about this is that the revenues from the FELP program have, through the years, primarily paid LOSFA's operating expenses, even for those programs that we operate that are state, like the people that run eligibility for TOPS and for GO, the outreach that we do that is not federally funded. Those revenues have funded those folks and those operations. As you can imagine, since we have not generated any new loans in the past 7 years, that revenue source is rapidly dwindling. We have depended upon the Board of Regents General Fund to help us with operating state programs, and will continue to do so. We have transitioned into management of this program through ECMC as we continue to operate this, and they're a very worthy outsourcer of our portfolio, so we're excited to begin that relationship with them as we complete the operation of this program.
Is the shortfall covered by the current year budget?
Yes, sir. In the current year's appropriation from the Board of Regents, we are covered for our operating expenses.
Thank you. Are there questions by the committee? Is there a motion to approve the exceptions item?
You approved that. This is just other business. You don't have another option.
Okay.
You're done.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the work of the committee, and let me just say we are adjourned.
Yes, sir. Regent Markle, Regent Chabert, Regent Kenny.
He's here.
Yep. Regent McDonald, Regent Meyer, Regent Perez, Regent Seal.
Here.
Have a quorum.
If you would proceed then with the update on the Sponsored Programs Committee.
Yes, sir. First, just to remind the Sponsored Programs Committee of the items in their purview. Sponsored Programs is largely responsible for the leadership and administration of the Board of Regents Support Fund, which is a constitutionally dedicated fund, as well as leadership and administration of federally funded statewide grants, including our Big Track 1 award from NSF, as well as several from NASA, NIH, DOE, and other federal agencies. We also do special initiatives. You'll hear a little bit more about those in other business, as well as policy issues related to research, tech transfer, and commercialization, which you will also hear about in a bit. So the only action item on the agenda for today is consent. We have 3 requests for appointment of endowed shareholders without a national search, 2 from Loyola and 1 from UL Lafayette. And the staff has reviewed these requests and had them vetted by outside reviewers and determined that they're acceptable, and we're recommending approval.
Are there any questions concerning the request relative to the appointment of endowed chairs without a national search? Any questions? Are we seeing more of that, appointments from within the existing faculty to these endowed chairs as opposed to
Yes, sir. We're seeing
national searches producing?
We're seeing quite a bit more of it. Part of the reason for this is the financial crisis in higher ed, the difficulty in establishing new faculty positions and hiring new faculty.
I asked you that question to amplify the repercussions of what has been going on for the last 9 years with these reductions in our appropriations. It's not just we're losing students, or not only that we're losing faculty, we're not able to recruit faculty, even to endowed chairs. This is maybe too much inside baseball for those across the street, but it has yet another face of damage if we do not get our funding stabilized.
Absolutely. And with that said, these three candidates are exceptional scholars. They are excellent scholars in their fields, so they're very highly qualified to fill these chairs. But filling these chairs with internal appointments means not bringing that new senior faculty blood to the campus.
They're basically replacing faculty that is gone.
They're either filling slots that were vacant and have been vacant for a while. As you remember, we have vacancy problems in these programs. They're either filling slots that have been vacant for long periods of time with faculty who are already on campus rather than recruiting an eminent scholar as is required by our policy, or they're replacing, as is the case in the Loyola instance, they're replacing faculty who've retired or otherwise phased out of the institution with faculty who are already on campus.
Further questions? Any comments? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second. Any opposition? Hearing none, we approve the consent agenda. Other business, please.
Thank you, sir. We have 2 items on other business. The first, I will introduce my colleague to my left. This is the newly minted Dr. Vernon Dunn. He just defended his dissertation on Monday and did a fabulous job.
Thank you.
So we're very proud of him. And Vernon, in his capacity at the Board of Regents, Vernon runs the staffing for the advisory committee, for the Louisiana STEM Advisory Council, which you heard something about from Senator Hewitt at the joint meeting previously. And I would like to invite Mr. Dunn, or Dr. Dunn, excuse me, to provide you with some information about the STEM Advisory Council and its work.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. So I'll start with a little background. Act 392 was authored by Senator Hewitt to create the STEM Council. It's chaired by the Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Reed now. It's comprised of 29 members. The list is up there. It's a lot of people. It's tasked with overseeing the creation, delivery, and promotion of STEM education in Louisiana, increasing student education and interest in the fields of STEM, aligning education, economic development, interest, and workforce needs, and specifically increasing the number of women who graduate in Louisiana with from a Louisiana post-secondary institution with a STEM degree or credential. So for one of the first things that former Commissioner Dr. Rallo did was kind of organize the work of the STEM Council into these subcommittees. So the PK-12 Education and Teacher Training Subcommittee is chaired by was originally chaired by Dr. Jean Burns and now Dr. Craig. There's the High School and Post-Secondary Subcommittee is chaired by Dr. Lupe LaMadrid. Of course, Communications and PR is Dr. Godfrey and Brittany. And then the Workforce Subcommittee is Dr. Vosper. So the way that the work is funneled is similar to the way that a lot of states around the country who have STEM councils who are successful, a lot of the work that I have to do that's comparable to the other states is that other states have a team that does strategic partnerships for the council. That's what I do. They have a team that does fundraising for the council. That's what I do and what Senator Hewitt does as well. They have a team that does the marketing and the advertising for the council. So it's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff in between meetings that we're kind of building from the ground up to do for the council.
So speaking of fundraising and building from the ground up, I'm planning really the first of its kind. It's a statewide STEM summit. It's going to be Friday, September 7th. It's going to be at the Pennington Biomedical Research Center. So it has 4 main goals. One is it's a showcase. There are a lot of great STEM programs and organizations going on in Louisiana that we really want to show off. So we have the whole center reserved, and they're going to be showcasing what they're doing. NASA's going to be there. A lot of great people are going to be there. It's going to be an opportunity for a lot of these organizations to do some teacher training, like a full day of teacher training. So I think that's going to be exciting for educators to come to. Senator Hewitt and I really want to set up and organize some regional STEM centers. So have breakout sessions for different regions of Louisiana to learn about the STEM, building their independent STEM centers so we can coordinate efforts around the state to really build up their capacities and work together to really increase participation around the state. And then lastly, just to get all the efforts coordinated, just to make sure we're all on the same page and that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing in terms of STEM. So I will, following this meeting this afternoon, I'll send out the formal invitation so everyone can register to attend the event. So I hope to see everyone there. It is a fundraiser, so it's free to attend, of course. You don't have to, refreshments will be provided, but I've already had conversations with some industry partners that are interested in making some large donations, hopefully. So invite all your friends to attend and who want to support some STEM initiatives and the STEM initiative itself. So that's it.
Dr. Dunn, congratulations on your...
I'm still getting used to hearing it. Thank you.
Your new deal. I just wanted to ask you what your experience was in herding cats. In as much as that sounds like your job description, but
yeah.
Best of luck. We will be there.
Thank you.
We will be there.
He's a quick study.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right, the second item on other business is just to update you on something we've been talking about in this committee for a while now, which is trying to build Louisiana's profile in national and specifically federal boards, committees, commissions related to research, economic development, tech transfer, commercialization, and so forth. We have a body that the board actually approved a reorganization of back in December called ACARL, the Advisory Committee for the Advancement of Research in Louisiana. This is comprised largely of the research officers at major research campuses, or campuses with major research expenditures across the state. This body meets at least annually. We met on June 8th, and this body adopted a process for identifying appropriate nominees to any opportunities that would arise for nominations to federal boards, commissions, and so forth. And I just wanted to update you on what it is that they approved and what the staff will be working on in this regard. The first thing the staff is actually currently doing and is underway is creating and maintaining a database of any of these opportunities, so that not only can we send nominees forward, we can notify campuses and other stakeholders when there are opportunities to make nominations so they can select the right people. And then from ACARL's perspective, the ACARL really wanted to create a subcommittee so that ACARL could consider putting what weight it has behind a single nominee or a set of nominees, and possibly in the future, refer nominees to the Board of Regents if the Board of Regents would like to take action. This is a way of engaging the whole state and all stakeholders in this effort to get more representation at the national level in typically science and technology research and tech transfer. Finally, I would point out that the process that ACARL did adopt does not in any way preclude this body or any other body or individual, in fact, from making nominations on its own to these national boards and committees. For example, the Board of Regents in April approved nominations to the National Science Board, which is the primary advisory board to the National Science Foundation. The NSF opens that nomination process up to any individual citizen of the United States, and this in no way precludes any stakeholder from making a nomination on his own.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I wanted to recognize Senator Hewitt, who is back there, but I can't see her because Terrence is in the way. Hi, Terrence. Yeah, Terrence, you're blocking out my view, bud. Senator Hewitt, would you like to address where we are on the STEM Advisory Council process as commented on by the newly minted Dr. Dunn?
I'll just say one word, if I could.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you for starting all of this, Senator. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's an honor for me to get to do that. As you all know, I have a STEM background, and so it's something that's very near and dear to my heart. Of course, I recognize that we don't have enough women in STEM, and so that's part of this initiative also, and I have some ideas on things that we can do to help grow and improve that. But I want to tell you as regents directly how much I appreciate the work that the Regents staff has provided in support of this effort. Like everything new, it's difficult to resource it in the beginning. And so we began this effort really with a commitment from Dr. Rollo to staff it for us with Dr. Dunn and others you've heard from today. And it has just mushroomed. You know, we, of course, have public meetings every month. We have a tremendous number of people that have a great interest in STEM that attend our meetings, participate in the work groups, there's breakouts. I mean, it's a very powerful event with lots of work that happens in between meetings. And so the Regents and the support of your staff has been instrumental in moving us forward. And you know, my commitment to you is that we are going to fund a lot of this initially with support from industry, because they are the ultimate stakeholders. They need a trained workforce, and they see the value in this. They're investing in STEM programs right now all over the state. I just don't believe that we're all rowing the boat in the same direction. And that's kind of the umbrella role that we see for the STEM Advisory Council. So it's going to be a tremendous effort. And then, of course, after we have industry stepping up, and we have metrics in place where we can measure and demonstrate success and that we're moving forward in a very positive direction, I will be pushing for public funding. Okay, so we will fund this with state dollars ultimately, but I need a little help getting started. And so you all are supporting us more than you know, and the leadership that Vernon and the other work group leaders you heard from Dr. Burns this morning, it's been tremendous. So thank you for that. You're going to hear a lot more, again, from us, and we'll have some things that will be coming to you on a more regular basis, asking for your approval and your support, both you as well as BESE.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. We want to partner with you and the other members of the Advisory Council. Today at our joint meeting, we took a step towards our re-engagement with our STEM teachers, teaching the teachers. And as we go forward, we will depend upon you and others to keep the pressure on. We cannot let up here, even for a moment. And that, of course, requires stable funding for higher education. You know I was going to say it. But I thank you for your efforts on this, Sharon.
Well, I thank you very much. The best is yet to come.
You bet. You bet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Robinson, is there any other business to come before the committee?
No, sir.
Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Yeah, there's a motion to adjourn. Come on, guys. All right. A second? Yes, second. Hearing no opposition, we are adjourned, and we move to our next committee, PRP, Planning, Research, and Performance. Regent Temple, would you call your committee to order, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. We'd like to call the Planning, Research, and Performance Committee to order. Dr. Tremblay, if you'll take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Temple, Vice Chair Adley, Regent David, Regent Ewing, Regent Perez, Regent Pryor, Regent McDonald, and Regent Wyatt. We are short 2 members for a quorum.
I'll appoint myself and Regent Seal, another member of the Executive Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tremblay. Now, We have items to present about this committee.
All right.
You got a little something going on?
Yeah,
a little bit deep. You got some Barry White going on today.
I was.
I think what he's saying is, let's get it on, right?
Well,
it's Teddy P.
There's so many ways I could respond to that, but I won't.
That was what Marty said. I didn't say that.
Let's say I had a
Said it
fight.
under my breath. He picked it up.
Let's say I had a fight with a bug last night and I lost. No, you know what's on the current slide, and I know when we're in this room, it's difficult for some of you can't see the slide. So, but that's just like a laundry list of the different items that come before this committee, the different work areas. Whole e-learning, licensure. We have a lot of regulations that come through our shop. Institution research, whenever anyone requests data and so on and so forth, that comes through our area. Master planning, we're going to be launching a master planning process very shortly. Responding to legislative resolutions, I think we've got 3 or 4 we're going to be responding to this year. Coordination with secondary, and we also handle a lot of SREB programs. I believe those of you who were here last month, Mr. Detillier shared with you about the Academic Common Market Program and Regional Contract Program. So that's so much for a summary of that.
Okay. We'll move to item 3 for our consent agenda. Dr. Tremblay, please present these items.
Yes, sir. Under the consent agenda this month, under the academic degree granting institutions, we have 4 license renewals. We also have 1 SARA renewal from Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady University, which most of you probably refer to as Our Lady of the Lake College. They changed their name recently. So the senior staff recommends approval of the items under the consent agenda.
Do I hear a motion to approve? Motion, Regent McDonald, Regent Seal. Second, any discussion? Motion passes. Let's continue. Next, TOPS Tech eligible associate programs.
Under agenda item 4, back in 2015, there was a law passed which expanded the uses of the TOPS Tech program. And what it did was it allowed expansion of eligible programs that were aligned with workforce needs. So before that, there were very few, if any, AA or AS programs that were eligible for TOPS Tech. This law opened that up. There's an interagency council that meets annually and looks at any additional programs that should be added or subtracted from the list. That council, workforce commissions on it, the regions, Department of Education, Workforce Investment Council. So, I mean, it's pretty much made up of the stakeholders who would be involved in making these determinations. So as a result of the work of that council, they have recommended the addition of a number of programs. Now, those that you see in red on the screen and red and highlighted in yellow are the ones we're recommending additional programs. And it's not as many as it might appear at first glance, because some of those are duplicative. I see a couple in care and development of young children, for instance. Plus, if you look at now near the bottom at LDCC, there's an AS in Computer Science, and it's South Louisiana Community College, and AS in Criminal Justice. Those programs are already eligible under that law, but those are new programs at those campuses, so they're being approved for those campuses. So not necessarily new disciplines, just new academic programs available at those campuses.
Gotcha.
So as a result of their work, the senior staff recommends that the Planning Research Performance Committee approve the revised TOPS Tech eligibility program list and authorize Dr. Vosper to transmit the approved program list to the Workforce Investment Council and LASFA in accordance with the law.
Okay. Members, you've heard the recommendations. Is there a motion to approve? So moved. Second. Okay. Any discussion? Motion approved. Now, any under other business? Academic affairs policy?
Yes, sir. The board has been active in the last 2 or 3 years in terms of looking at its placement policies and its admission standards to see if we could provide further opportunities and access for students while maintaining quality. In June 2015, the board approved a policy where the regionals may admit students needing one developmental course, but only the 2-year colleges or the HBCUs were allowed to teach those courses. And we reported on the results of that. I think it was back in December or January. In April 16, the board passed a pilot revision to this policy to allow co-requisite delivery in support of English and math with students scoring 2 points below the placement minimum, and asked the staff to come back in 2 years and report on that. And that's what I'm reporting on today. Last December, the board passed another pilot, and that pilot will be reporting back to the board next spring. So in terms of the 16 pilot, it allowed the institutions to admit students who missed that minimum bottom score, English subscore and math subscore, by 1 or 2 points, but that the institution had to commit to offer co-requisite programs and support services so those students could be successful. So in the slide you're looking at now, and I invite those to join me in looking at this, you will see the numbers of students that were impacted. So we combined fall 16 and 17 to give us a big N. And so you see in English, it's required to have an 18. So you look at the 16s and the 17s, there are about 1,500 students there. Then the math, where before you had to score 19, you put the 17 and 18 together and you've got almost 6,000. So that's substantial. So that's the size of the group. These are students who otherwise were either inadmissible or had to be admitted by exception prior to this pilot. So this is a pilot to see how this is working. So this is broken down to flagship, statewide, regional, and total. I'll speak just from the total, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on the other ones. So when you look at English, we're now talking about English, you've got those roughly 1,500 students, and the hours earned, you see those who scored 16 earned 12.5 hours, those 17, 12.8. Then, of course, those who are better prepared tend to take a heavier load. The 22 plus, those are probably TOPS, honors, and performance students. And, they may be in majors that require heavy loads. So the term GPA, if you look at it, again, as I've said before in presenting similar types of data, it's really not rocket science. It's all about preparation. And we were talking today in the joint meeting about making teachers in the STEM areas better prepared and be better teachers to help students be better prepared. And so again, the better prepared students perform better. So again, it's not a, yeah. So as you see, the term GPA, the average was 2.08, and then when you go to 17, it's 2.16, and then 2.34. Then, of course, when you get to the better prepared students, it's 2.8. So that's English. Now we'll look at, and this is the overall GPA. So these are students who are admitted because of the math score, but the overall term GPA includes all the courses they took. So, what effect Western Civ course has by your math score, that's conjecture, but this is overall.
This obviously is for the year and not per semester, correct? I mean, the hours earned piece.
That's semester.
That's per semester.
The hours earned.
21 hours. Right?
That's the fall semester. So a full load is 12.
Right, I know. I'm saying they got a lot of people taking 21 hours.
That's just the fall. So, I mean, those students who want to get out in 4 years, you've got to take 15 hours at a minimum, and depending on your major, you have to take more than that. So the 22.8 are those students that maybe even trying to finish in 3.5 years. It's hard to say. And one other thing.
Can I address one question?
Yes, sir.
To Dr. Tremblay. This is the first time we've had data, is it not, for the last 2 years since we started the co-requisite exemptions to allow what otherwise would have been underprepared students because of a failure in math or English, but otherwise prepared overall GPA and ACT scores, to see whether or not this co-requisite is working, whether this pilot program is working. It appears that there seems to be that they are maintaining after the first semester, at least the C average, even with the 2 points below the cut score in both English and in math. I guess the question is, are you able to break out how many of those actually were in that underperforming class of English or math? What is their grade point average for that particular course? Wouldn't that tell us if that co-requisite's working?
That is on the next set of slides.
Okay.
Yeah. So, as Chair Levy was just alluding to, we also, instead of looking at the overall GPA, we examine the GPA in that subject matter. So students who scored below the cut score in English, we looked at what their average GPA was in English courses. And again, you'll see it's similar to looking at the overall GPA.
It's working.
And of course, the English may have more an effect on like a Western Civ course, psychology, those courses that require a lot of reading and the like. In math, that's the only case now where it dropped a little below the 2.0. You see the 1.98. Now, if you round 1.98, you're at 2.0. So again, and Chair Levy, you know, we had a pilot co-requisite for like 3 years. Some institutions participated, some didn't. Some were more aggressive than others. And as a result of all that work, that's when we adopted this pilot here in 2016. So now we're coming back and showing you, and it appears to me that it's working. Now, last December, the board went a little further and said, on a pilot basis, let's look at 3 below. Those students will be admitted this fall. I don't know how big that cohort will be, but instead of waiting 2 years to report back to you how they're doing at the request of the board, in the spring, we're going to tell you how they did that entering fall.
Or that semester.
So you know, if it's not working, if the evidence based on one semester is it's not working, we may want to take action immediately.
These are averages of all of our 4-year schools.
Yes.
And you will be able to break down, because co-requisite English and co-requisite math are done differently at each of our 14.
Certainly.
Some probably are doing very well and some probably not so well. Will we be able, perhaps the next time we visit this issue, to look at those institutions whose co-requisites are working well and those that are not, and see if we can't weed out those who are not doing well or have them adopt more successful models?
Yes, we will have that ability. And just to remind the committee, when we were piloting the co-rec, the first couple of years, it was very clear to us that some were doing very well and some were not. Yes. And we surveyed those who were doing very well and found out much more about those programs. And then we encouraged all the other programs to adopt. And one thing was as simple as go to class. Now that sounds kind of simple, but the programs that encourage or maybe even require the students to go to class has a better result than those that the students say, hey, I think I'll go in. No, I won't.
Anecdotally, do you have a sense of what style of co-requisite? Was it lab work? Was it tutoring? Which one seemed to be working the better?
If I recall, I think it was those that, depending on the need of the student, offered a variety, a menu of things. Some say, hey, listen, if you just go to the math lab once a week, we think you'll be fine. Another one that made you go to the math lab 3 times a week, or math lab 3 times a week and then tutoring. You know, so I mean, it's a combination of things depending on where the student is.
Well, one last comment, if I might, Mr. Chairman, is we want to continue to explore increasing access to as many students. We don't want to send students away. We want to get them in. So we may have gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit by dropping it now to 3 points below the cut score, but we'll find out. And it may be harmful that but we need to do, we need to push the boundaries at all sides. We need to push the boundaries not only on these ACT cut scores, but maybe the whole concept of ACTs and other methods by which we might want to take a student in who might not otherwise qualify. Yet at the same time, we must balance the efficiencies of the state dollars that we're using to award it to those that are most likely to succeed, but we continue to push out and down to reach as many of our students as can, because we have achievement gaps geographically, racially, gender-wise. We don't have enough men. Whoever thought I'd say, we don't have enough men in four-year schools. And there are so many of these areas we need to push out, but I'm probably the most outspoken ones about admissions requirements and all that stuff. But philosophically, we need to go after as many as we can and provide them pathways. And I'm anxious to see how 3 points below the cut score works, and also interested in seeing which one of these co-requisite programs seems to do the best.
Yeah, and one closing comment regarding that. If you recall, Dr. Sullivan from LCTCS has testified before this board saying, you know, when you put in the admissions criteria, the idea was if you weren't prepared, you go start at the community college. He said, you would have thought there would have been this big surge of all those students who were inadmissible would end up community colleges. He never saw that surge. So some number of those students are walking away. So we're thinking, again, in terms of access and getting people to get a credential, if you start giving them a little bit more flexibility and make the institutions more responsible for handling the services to help those students, some of those students who otherwise would have been lost are being found.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I got a question too. Go ahead, John.
Dr. Trimley, is it the plan to follow these students who were admitted on this basis to see how they progress through their education?
Yes.
And whether they graduate on time with their cohorts or not?
Yes. Yes, we're going to be looking at the retention of these students as they go through. And again, part of it's this rocket science statement, you know, the graduation rate of a student with a 30 and above ACT is going to be much higher than the graduation rate, no matter how hard they try, you know. So, you know, I can predict what some of the results will be, but yes, we'll be doing that and bringing it back.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I've got to come in. Right. Dr. Tremblay, clear up this. These students that we're talking about is the group that we debated a good while back, what, 2 or 3 meetings ago, when this recommendation came forward. And I know Regent and now Chairman Levy, and of course I was very opposed to lowering standards, but we need to raise standards. Now, we're talking about admission to universities that have a minimum ACT and grade point to get in, right? Is that what we're speaking about? Or is TOPS involved in this also?
Now, what this does, Regent McDonald, is it says to the institutions, we're going to allow you to admit students with, in this case, 1 or 2 points below that minimum placement score, not admission score, the placement score. But you're responsible. You can't just admit them and say, wow, we admitted them. You have to provide that menu of services so that student can succeed there. And that goes back to Regent Seal's question about tracking retention and graduation. So the responsibility is on the institution that if you admit them, we want them to succeed. We don't want you to just admit them and give them false hope. So again, I'm not sure I look at this as lowering standards. I look at this as providing some additional flexibility with attendant responsibility on behalf of the institutions to handle it. And if they can't handle it, then this flexibility will be removed.
Well, we're anxious to see the results because I don't think we need to just keep going down. If we're at 17, or we're going to go to 16, or we're going to go to 15, we created, and I worked on that commission to create the community college system. What's wrong with if I'm not eligible to go to a 4-year institution? Well, maybe consider a 2-year institution.
Right.
Consider going to in a work training program. We're not. I want to make clear that we're not trying to push all students to 4-year academic institutions.
Not at all.
And the academic institutions should not have to take low-performing students. We have limited funds. As you know, this year's budget, we don't know yet, but we got to spend those dollars wisely, and we got to admit students that are eligible to be admitted, and like you say, track them, and let's see if they can graduate. I know back a few years ago, law school, for example, the law school admissions were not as strong as they are now. Then, and Regent Seal can speak to this, then they raised the standards of that entering class, and guess what? When they raised the standards, more were back for the second year. And then ultimately we graduated, and we graduated stronger, better prepared attorneys. So I'm really concerned. I hope you never come back, or the group that's pushing this, never ask you to come back to the table and lower any ACT scores or grade point so that they can circumvent the standards that have been set for universities. Because
just a couple of observations, Regent McDonald. One is you mentioned TOPS. Again, this is the sub-score for course placement. At the regionals, the requirement is still a 20 ACT. So that goes, or high school GPA, you know, that's the admission standard. So we didn't change that. This is the placement scores. And you were right. I mean, if I came today and showed you data where the average GPA of the people we admitted under this pilot was 1.5, then we'd say, hey, is this the right thing to do? But we're showing, you know, almost throughout that all these students had a C average, and C average at the end of your first term, there's a lot going on that first semester in college, and you know there are a lot of top students that don't get a 2.0 their first semester at college. So, but again, looking further down, we'll get some more information.
Tell me this: our higher education system, our universities, colleges, we still rank at the bottom, 49th, 48th, 49th in the nation. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
As we rank our colleges and universities compared to across the country, national rankings, we're right at the bottom, right?
I mean, there are all kinds of rankings. I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that, like funding, yeah, we're right at the bottom, no doubt. Support per FTE student, we're right at the bottom. You don't see many academic quality rankings that get down to the regional campuses. Usually those are the rankings of AAU universities and research universities and the like. I'm not sure I answered your question.
Well,
but
I know our elementary and secondary schools are ranked near the bottom across the country. We try to do things, we never get there.
Right.
And I'm sure if we're ranked that low, elementary, secondary, those are the kids that come to our universities. Sure. Our universities sure. have to accept.
The secondary level, you know, they take some national assessments so they can rank them against other states.
Right.
College enrollments don't work quite that way, but you're right. I mean, as I said, preparation drives this performance, and if they come in unprepared, the institution either has to say you can't come in, or if you come in, we have to provide you the proper scope of services to bring you up and make you succeed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As the Cajuns would say, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, it was pudding where I grew up, but
Proof is in the boudin.
Any other business come before the planning research? Okay.
No, sir.
Hearing none, we move to adjourn. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Move, second.
All right, gentlemen and ladies, we are now going to move into our full board meetings, having concluded all these committee meetings, and I would ask Carolyn to call the roll. Thank you, Regent Temple, by the way.
Thank you,
Regent Adley, Regent Chabert,
Here.
Regent David, Regent Ewing, Regent Kenny, Regent Levy,
Here.
Regent Lipsey, Regent Markle, Regent McDonald, Regent Meyer, Regent Perez, Regent Pryor, Regent Seal, Regent Temple,
Here.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Wyatt. We do have a quorum.
All right, first thing up is public comments. Do we have any requests for public comments?
No, sir.
All right, next agenda items, approval of the minute from May 23rd, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion. We have a second. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion is passed. Next is my comments, and for this month, I have asked Regent Seal to make a presentation concerning how higher education funding, since that's what we've been talking about for the last 8 years, how higher education funding and for our state versus our peers in the Southern Regional Educational Board of some 16 states. Regent Seal, would you give
Thank you,
that
Mr.
a shot?
Chairman. I have, I think, 2 slides to present to you. Would you bring one of those up, please, sir? Need some help. There we go. And then there's one more after that.
Yep, you can switch it on with your hand.
Okay. We have been watching the fate of higher education for so many years that we have begun to adopt a bunker mentality. And in that bunker mentality, we look at our current funding levels and quiver about what changes are going to be made to them. This is a chart that shows higher education mid-year cuts along with the reductions at the beginning of the year. And what's important about this chart is not just the this chart shows 15 cuts since 2008. Now, there's other data that shows 19, but it's a and that's what causes the bunker mentality, where we just hunker down and concentrate on whether we can survive the last cut, and oh my goodness, what will the next cut mean for the ability to deliver a higher education product. And in the bunker mentality, we do not look around to see what other states are doing. So we have some data here in this next slide. If I can cue it. Okay. While we're working on that slide, let me just tell you a little bit about the history of where the Southern Regional Educational Board's data comes from. The Southern Regional Education Board is a 16-state compact where states from Texas all the way through Maryland and above have collaborated in order to form what really is a think tank and to assemble resources that are available for all the universities in all the member states. The Southern Regional Education Board data showed that in 2008, in the beginning of the Jindal administration, Louisiana had managed to build up its support for higher education to a number that was 103% of the average of the 16 states. Now that took significant work by Governor Blanco and by Governor Foster to persuade and encourage and convince the legislatures of their terms to fund higher education at an appropriate level, and that certainly was. 8 years later, when Governor John Bell Edwards took over, as a result of the cuts that had taken place, Louisiana had fallen to 61%, to the bottom, which means that we are providing for higher education 61% of the average of the other states, or really of the 16 states. Now, I have enormous admiration for the skills and abilities of our university leaders and our system leaders. But you know that no one can manage an enterprise at 60% of the resources that are provided by rival competing institutions. It's just not possible. So with that background, then what is the significance of the current proposed cuts that will go into place if the legislature doesn't fix it during this special session? So what you see before you is a chart that takes the pro rata with no exemptions formula for the funding that the legislature has provided. And you'll see the colored column, the grand total of that $422 million. Go all the way over to the right-hand column and see what percentage is that of the funding level on an FTE basis of the Southern regional average. It's 50.9%. So if this budget is adopted, we were already in last place at 61%. We will drop another notch. There's no one that we can fall below because we've been at the bottom. But 50.9% is the result of this cut. And if you look at it system by system, the system cut for the University of Louisiana takes it. System cuts for the Southern University system takes it to 38.4% of the Southern regional average. For the LSU system, it takes it to 56, yeah. And so as you go up the list, you see the LCTC system is probably better off than most in terms of percentages, but it's almost an abominable picture if you look at that entire chart. And so I think the point of this is that we need to widen our focus, and we need to make the public aware and make the legislature aware that providing 50% of the average of the 16 states that we're compared with is unreasonable, unacceptable, and is a short track to dismantling higher education in Louisiana and making it dysfunctional. And I think that point, that 50% number, overrides whatever other considerations might underlie the legislature's attempt to fund higher education, and we should make it known and make it public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're all sitting in this room today expecting by next week that we will have something tangible. our expectations and hope is that we will have stable funding, the same funding we had this last year. But even if we get that stable funding, we're still dead last. Now, what this shows that this would be like shooting a dead horse. This is unacceptable. If we don't want this state to be anything other than a blue-collar state forever, if you want to cheat our children and grandchildren of their future to live here and to be employed here and to contribute here, then keep doing this stuff. Keep cutting us each year. You will eventually get what you deserve, which is low quality, lack of access, and people moving out in droves. I appreciate Regent Seal's willingness to drill down and get these numbers together. It's ought to scare everybody, including some of the members of the House of Representatives.
Mr. Chairman, I have just one other point, if
Please.
I may. And it's a personal anecdotal story. One of my law partners is taking her 11th grade son around to look at colleges, and he's a very fine student, up near the top of his class. He's a student athlete. He's wholesome and well connected in his world, and he will be a quality human being when he completes his education. So one of the stops was at the University of Alabama, and there was the University of Alabama is maybe $5,000 per student in support ahead of what Louisiana is. And so when they came into the room on the visiting day and introduced themselves and were checked off on the roll, since their address was in Hammond, Louisiana, this young student and his mother were diverted from the big room and taken to the Louisiana room,
Oh, no.
which was filled with very high-quality students.
Wow.
And this young man saw 5 of his classmates in that room. Now, my law partner was thrilled with the presentation about the University of Alabama.
Can we not say the A word?
I'll not say it again. But what distressed her is to realize that her son will go there and probably never come back. And that's the consequence of defunding higher education, is that people like my law partner will go out of state to see their grandchildren.
Wow.
We're preaching to the choir. Let's go preach to those decision makers across the street. We cannot accept this. All right, thank you, Regent Seal. We're going to have committee reports at this time. I'd like to take up all the committee reports in globo. However, any member that wishes to take them separately, certainly we will do that. Is there anyone who wishes to take up the committee report separately? I didn't think so. Do I have a motion to approve all the committee recommendations? Regent Chabert, seconded by Regent Temple. Is there any discussion, any questions, any opposition? Motion passes. Thank you. We're under other business, item 7. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our staff. This has been a tough hold to row over the last several months during these unusual sessions, special sessions, regular sessions, more special session, and we may be home at our back at our places of residence and not recognizing that they are working day and night. I know I get emails from Carolyn and now from Kim, you know, at all times, day and night. I don't know why she's such an early riser, but she is doing that, as well as all of these other folks. Y'all have done magnificent work to keep our heads above the water, to show up where we need to be. Terrence and Matt and the rest of them are across the street every single day. saying what we are saying to ourselves in here, how important it is and how necessary it is for this state to finally, hopefully, prioritize higher education. They've said it for decades. It's time to stand up and do it. Each of you, I think, received a letter that was sent out last week to the media and stakeholders on behalf of the board. We had another letter that went out from all the 4 systems and Board of Regents, again, hitting it one more time, trying to convince the legislatures and those that they represent that higher education is the best return on investment. Those dollars over there can be placed. Hopefully, we will come back next time and we will be in a different position. Hopefully we'll be stable and able to do these new and improved things, these new pilot programs, and to take these student teachers and to do the things that we need to be done that we can't do while we're continuing to fall off of a cliff. Let's, for goodness sake, declare that we've hit the bottom and start clawing our way back up. Before we adjourn, I want to make a special presentation to Dr. Burns. Jeannie Burns is currently the Associate Commissioner for Teacher and Leadership Initiatives. That's a big title. That's a big job. She's been almost 20 years at the Regents, and as most of you know, she is now retiring. She served as the co-director of a $4.2 million grant awarded to the Office of Governor by Wallace Foundation in 2004 through 2008. She was the co-director of a $3.4 million grant from the Wallace Foundation 2008 to 2017 that improved educational leaders in this state. Dr. Burns directed a $600,000 Core to College grant awarded to the Louisiana Board of Regents from the Rockefeller Philanthropy Foundation, and also served as a principal investigator of a $3.2 million Title II Teacher Quality State Enhancement Grant Award to the Office of the Governor in 2000 through 2005. And a $400,000 grant awarded to the Louisiana Board of Regents by the Carnegie Corporation of New York in 2007 through 2009, which was to develop the value-added teacher preparation assessment model, which was extraordinarily successful across the country. Dr. Burns previously taught and served as a district administrative roles in Florida and in Louisiana. She received her master's and PhD from LSU. She has taught at Stetson University and at Southeastern. Dr. Burns has published in professional journals and presented papers at over 150 international, national, and regional conferences. During the last 20 years, Dr. Burns has been directly involved in educational reform, has assisted state leaders in developing plans for K-12 education and create the K-12 Technology Initiative. She's helped to develop the K-12 school accountability system and to coordinate efforts to redesign all public and private sector teacher education and educational leadership programs within the state. The tip of the spear is you teach the teachers. That's what she has led for these last 20 years. Dr. Burns is married to Al Burns, a professor in the marketing department at LSU. They have one son and 2 grandsons. I want to take personal opportunity to thank Dr. Burns. She was here when I got here 100 years ago and has always been able to guide and suggest to me and to other regents the importance of the work that she's engaged in and that we're engaged in through her. Thank you, Dr. Burns, and there it is. We have something for you for 20 years of service. Please do. Just a few, that's all. Not too many, because we're going to take your bowl away if it goes past lunch.
Right. No, I'm going to be very, very quick. But I do want to, again, this morning I said a few words, but again, this time I just want to thank the Board of Regents. As I had mentioned this morning, I took 1 year leave of absence from Southeastern Louisiana University, and it has turned into now 19 years. And that would not have been possible without President John Crane at Southeastern agreeing to allow me to have a leave of absence from the university, but it also would not have occurred if the Board of Regents hadn't agreed to allow me to continue to have my tenure at the university while working for the Board of Regents. And I'll forever be grateful for the fact that you did that, and also for the fact that you were open to doing new and different types of things here within our state that were different than how we had traditionally operated as far as teacher preparation was concerned within the state. But I couldn't have done any of this without the support of all of our universities, our College of Ed deans, our chief academic officers, and without the support of the Board of Regents staff. We have a very unique staff here where people work very, very well together. They support each other, and they're always looking for what is in the best interest of students here within the state. And of course, you as a board and previous boards have always been very, very supportive of us. But I did want to just mention one other thing, and that is that I truly appreciate the fact that the Board of Regents agreed to go ahead and identify a person to replace me. We went through a national search. The person was identified in January. It's Dr. Susanna Craig, who's sitting in the back here, and had her shadow me for 2 days a week starting in February, and she's been shadowing me every day during the month of June. And that has allowed us to have a very smooth transition as I leave and as Susanna comes in. We're to a point right now where all of our universities have gone through a process, a second time, of redesigning their programs, and as of today, they're being approved. The final ones are being approved over in BESE, and we still have more work that's going to be occurring within the future. But it's a really, really, really good transition point to have a new person come in. So again, I want to thank you and for the fact that you've been so supportive of me, and as well as the Board of Regents staff, and as well as Southeastern, so that I've been able to do this. I'm leaving feeling like I've had a wonderful career, and it could not have occurred without the support of the people that have surrounded me over all of these different years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Burns. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I again want to extend my congratulations to our new Regent Kenny, and remind you that we do not meet in the month of July, less and except the executive committee, which will be meeting probably Thursday next week. We'll give you formal notification. And our next board meeting then will be on August 22nd, 2018. More details to come. Thank you very much. If there's no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you. We are adjourned.